I'm going to demonstrate another short response from the ELA. The question number 38, is how does the description of the setting develop a central idea in excerpt from the open boat? Use two details from the story to support your response. So remember to read the questions before you read the passage so that when you do read the passage, you can focus on the questions best to answer. So we're going to think about what is the central idea of the passage and where was the setting described, and find two details to support that. Obviously, we know the setting of the passage, I'm going to pull up a blank version of the passage, is the ocean, and there are many places where the setting is described pretty vividly. Let me pick a couple examples of that. Here's a good one. The horizon narrowed and widened and dipped and rose, and at all times its edge was jagged with waves that seemed to thrust up in points like rocks. Here we see that the setting is the ocean during a storm. Now let's find one more example that shows the setting. Okay, here's another good example. As each slaty wall of water approached, it was not difficult to imagine this wave was the final outburst of the ocean, the last effort of the grim water. There was a terrible grace in the move of the waves. They came in silence, save for the snarling of the crest. I think I'll even focus more on the last part of this for my example to support my response. So let's go back over and start to answer the question. The description of the setting supports a central idea that the ocean during a storm can be very dangerous. The setting of the ocean is described throughout the passage as dangerous with high waves and wind. One example from the text that supports this central idea, I'm going to add the setting. One example of the setting from the text that supports this central idea is, quote, and I'll go find my first section. The horizon narrowed and widened, dipped and rose. At all times its edge was jagged with waves that seemed to thrust the point up in rocks. I'm just going to cheat a little bit here and snip this to save time. Is the horizon narrowed and widened and dipped and rose, and at all times its edge was jagged with waves that seemed to thrust up in points like rocks. Okay, so I have the introduction to the quote, I have the quote, and now I need to explain the quote. This line demonstrates how the ocean was rough with waves that are as dangerous as jagged rocks. Which shows the setting and supports the central idea. A second example is, okay, so let me go back over. And again, I will just snip the section I want. There we go. There was a terrible grace in the move of the waves, and they came in silence, save for the snarling of the crests. And then we can get rid of this. Okay, so I've introduced the second example and quoted it, and now I need to explain it further. How does it support the central idea? This description of the waves moving silently, but with a snarling sound, reinforces the danger of the ocean in this storm. In both of these examples from the text, the setting develops a central idea about the text, that this ocean is dangerous for the sailors because of the storm. Okay, so we've introduced the topic by restating the question and explaining it. We have one example with a quote and explanation, and then a second example with a quote and explanation, and then we wrap it all up by restating the main point again at the end.